Before we get to the economics of it all, your thoughts on the announcement by the Prime Minister that basically Christmas is ruined for the second year in a row?
Yeah, I think it's appalling. It's a combination, I think, of deep cynicism from a government that is trying to get the news of itself breaking Christmas regulations last year off the front pages, and also kind of a profound spinelessness. I think it could be one or the other of those two, but the spinelessness I refer to would be backing down, I think, to the usual dire warnings from Sage, ignoring what has actually been quite a day of good news in terms of what we know about the vaccine's effectiveness against the new variants, and also continuing good news coming from South America, where doctor after doctor keeps telling us, and has done now for 2 weeks, that this just it does seem to be genuinely a milder variant of COVID, and there's not that much to worry about. So no, I think it's absolutely appalling that the government's doing this, not because the restrictions in themselves are that draconian, although certainly if you're unvaccinated, it's going to have an effect on you, but because there isn't any need whatsoever to be introducing these kind of restrictions on an ultra cautious basis when we've got, I think now 22 million people have had their third jab, a huge amount of natural immunity in society. And if the government is just going to start bringing in new restrictions every time there's a new variant, despite the fact that the evidence that suggests that this variant is a threat to a heavily immunized country like the UK, then it will never end because there will keep being new variants. So it's not so much the severity of the restrictions I object to; it's the very flippant and casual way in which Boris Johnson introduces them, and the heavy suspicion he's doing so for party political reasons.
Absolutely. He actually began that press briefing by saying, we don't know what Omicron is, and then said, but I'm going to wreck Christmas just in case, which is unacceptable, to be honest with you. Let's have a little listen, if you don't mind, Chris, to Theresa May and what I wanted to discuss with you, her concerns, which echo what you've just said.
The early indications of Omicron are that it is more transmissible, but potentially leads to less serious illness than other variants. I understand that would be the normal progress of a virus. Variants will continue to appear year after year. When is the government going to accept that learning to live with COVID, which we all have to do, means we will almost certainly have an annual vaccine, and that we cannot respond to new variants by stopping and starting sectors of our economy, which leads to businesses going under and jobs being lost?
I mean, timid Theresa May making a very bold and, I think, correct point. Every time this Prime Minister hears the word new variant, he flies into a blind panic. The working from home thing is going to have a terrible effect economically on the country generally, particularly the capital, London. The vaccine passport will have an economic effect. And as Theresa May quite rightly says, this constant stop-starting of the economy could be disastrous. Explain to us from your expert viewpoint just how bad it could be.
Well, my colleague Julian Jessup at the IEA estimates that it's going to cost the economy £4 billion a month. So we're not talking about a trivial amount of money, and I think that is perfectly realistic given the knock-on effects that you get, particularly the working from home thing. I know it's only guidance, but employers will tend to take that fairly seriously, and the government's explicitly saying that if you can work from home, you should work from home. That has an effect not only on the bottom line of the business that is employing the individual, but also parts of the kind of secondary economy around, Canary Wharf, for example. So there is that, and of course the vaccine passports is a big burden on the kind of businesses that are going to have to comply with it. So that would be sports clubs, and of course nightclubs, and anybody organizing any kind of event, particularly if people are stood up there. So we got to, this is not lockdown level economic devastation, but we could well do without it. And as ever with the government, we're not getting any kind of cost benefit analysis from this. It may be quite possible that we're going to get more than £4 billion of benefit, maybe just in some kind of intangible way, in terms of health, in terms of maybe preventing a larger disaster further down the line. Doesn't seem very likely to me, but I mean, the government's the one who are proposing and enforcing these restrictions. It's really well beyond time now that the government came clean and said, look, these are the costs, these are the benefits, this is the risk. Now, nothing's certain in this world, but we think it's more likely than not that we will have a serious problem in our hands in 2 or 3 weeks' time if we don't introduce these policies. And show us the evidence, show us a cost-benefit analysis, because vaccine passports in particular have conspicuously failed to do anything in any of the countries where they've been used. Germany, the cases and the deaths are going off the charts. France, so many countries.
Wales
in Europe,
and Scotland, they're not really working at all.
They didn't work in Scotland, they didn't work in Wales, they didn't work in Ireland. They have not worked anywhere. And yet the government is bringing them in. It doesn't make any sense. This is not evidence-based policy. And it's all happened in the space of about 36 hours. It was only yesterday morning, Dominic Raab was saying, we see no reason at all to have Plan B. Yesterday morning. And of course, he was quite right. There wasn't any reason to have it. What's happened in 36 hours? The only thing that's happened in 36 hours is the scandal about the government ignoring its own restrictions last December.
Yeah, I guess what will struggle to make the front pages tomorrow, the Downing Street Christmas party scandal. What a coincidence. Chris, great to talk. Thank you very much for your time. Christopher Snowdon there from the IEA, Head of Lifestyle at the Institute of Economic Affairs.